Motorola is really putting in a lot of effort in 2025 to give us really excellent budget and mid-range options. Now this is the new Motorola Moto G Power 2025, and this phone is certainly an example of that. Now this video is my hands-on and first impressions video. I literally just set this phone up, but I do want to go over my favorite things about it already and share my thoughts with you. So let's get started. So this is the Motorola Moto G Power 2025. Now before we get too far into things here with this device, I want to show you what comes included in the box. So here's the box, and as you can see, it is a slim box, and the reason for that is because there is no USB wall adapter included. But we are getting a SIM card removal tool. We're also getting a double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. And then finally, we are getting some literature here. Now with the Moto G Power 2025, you can buy this phone factory unlocked for $299, and I believe this phone's already at quite a few carriers, and if it's not, it certainly will be. The G Power series of phones from Motorola over the years has been super successful, and that is for multiple reasons. And while one reason for that is that the phone gets excellent carrier distribution, the phone also is a really good value in general. So whether you're buying it through a carrier or paying full price for it, I think you're gonna find this phone can do a lot for the money. Now the first thing I wanna talk about is the material on the back of the phone, and I really like it a lot. Now this material kind of looks like leather, and it's actually known as eco leather or silicone polymer. So it is very soft to the touch, it feels premium, but at the same time it feels durable. And you can see very close up the kind of detail that we're getting here. So yeah, it does indeed look like leather, but at the same time it doesn't have the downsides of leather. And of course it's not from an animal. Now they did use a similar material last year as well, and I will be comparing this phone to the predecessor model, but I am glad that they're sticking with what works. Now despite this being a budget smartphone, we're actually getting a very big display here at 6.8 inches. This phone does feature Corning Gorilla Glass 5, making it extra durable, and then with this device, we're getting an IPS LCD display, and we are getting a 120 Hz refresh rate here with the phone. So I do wish this display was OLED, but at the same time, I'm glad at least that it is 120 Hz with it being LCD. Now, despite it being LCD, I actually think it looks really good. And then with that fast refresh rate, really this display doesn't leave you with much to be desired. Of course, if it was OLED, that would make it a bit better. And if you do want to get a similar phone that has an OLED display, then certainly consider going for the Moto G Stylus instead. That phone's just $100 more than this phone, and you are getting a better looking display. But again, the display is not bad by any means, certainly gets the job done. It is 1080p, so it is decently crisp and clear here. We're getting a PPI of 385. We're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so the phone itself is pretty tall. And then we are getting an 87.2% screen to body ratio. So even though this phone is meant to be a budget mid-range device, I actually think it feels a lot more premium than you'd think it would be. And I appreciate as well that the bezels are decently small here on the phone. The bottom bezel is a bit thicker, and then up top here we do have a hole punch for the front-facing camera. Now that front camera is 16 megapixels, and stay tuned over the next couple of weeks as I will be doing my full review video of this device, which will also include camera samples. Now with this phone, we are getting 128 gigabytes of storage, along with microSD card expansion. So as it is, 128 gigs is quite a bit, especially for a phone in this price range, and then adding in microSD card expansion brings us even more value. So it's certainly nice if you find yourself running out of internal space. You can always offload photos and videos, for example, on that SD card, so you have more actual space on the device. Now with this phone, we are getting Face Unlock, and then we're also getting a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, which is nice and fast and responsive. Now with other more premium devices, the fingerprint sensor is typically built into the display, but I actually feel like this placement right here is also very convenient. Now with this device, we're getting a dual camera setup, we're getting a 50 megapixel main camera and an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera. And I believe this other thing that looks like a camera is actually there to assist with portrait mode. Now here's how things look on the camera app on the device. This is with the main rear camera right now. Then from there, you can go over to 0.5 for the ultra wide camera, and you can fit a lot more into a single frame. You can also go right here to macro mode, and then with that, you can get very close up, and things will be in decent detail here. I will say though, it's not a dedicated macro mode, so don't expect to get those kinds of results. It's basically just using the other cameras on the device, of course, to kind of mimic a macro camera. Now this phone does have portrait mode, so you can get those nice blurred out backgrounds. There's a pro mode as well, giving you a lot of different functionalities. And then under the More tab, you can do various things such as dual capture, so you can capture both the front and rear camera at the same time. We also have the option here for scanning documents, photo booth. That looks cool. I'm gonna check that out later though. So it is nice that even though this is meant to be a cheaper budget phone, we're still getting a lot of features here. And then also there is a group selfie mode when you're taking front-facing photos, which is great. And as far as video goes, this phone is limited at 1080p for the front and rear cameras, which is a bit disappointing, but I suppose for a phone in this price range, that's not really that big of a deal. And then with this device, we're getting 8 GB of RAM paired up with a MediaTek Dimensity 6300 processor. Now I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 6, and here are the scores from that test. So not necessarily the best scores ever, but at the same time, for a $300 smartphone, I do feel like this is pretty decent. Of course, I need to use this phone a lot more to get a better idea of that actual performance, but so far it seems pretty appropriate for how the phone is priced. And then with this device, we are getting a 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery, so very impressive. But what's even more impressive is that this phone does support up to 30-watt fast charging. Now 30 watts certainly is not fast by any means compared to the more premium phones out there, but for a budget phone, I actually think 30 watts is really good. Also with this device, we are getting Android 15 out of the box. It does feature Motorola's skin, which I actually like quite a bit because it really doesn't change too much, but at the same time adds in extra bonus features. And then with this device, we are guaranteed to get 2 major Android software updates, so we'll be getting Android 16 and Android 17. Another nice surprise with this phone too is that we are getting stereo speakers. So you're getting audio out of both the earpiece and the main speaker in the bottom, which you typically don't find with phones in this segment. And then with this device, we have NFC for tap and pay. And then the phone does have an IP68, IP69 dust and water resistance rating. And that also means that this phone can actually withstand high pressure water jets, and it can go underwater for up to 1.5 meters for up to 30 minutes. So if you are in a downpour, for example, maybe it's raining very heavily and the rain is hitting this device quite a bit, you don't have to worry about any issues popping up, at least as they say. Now this phone is made of plastic on the sides. On the right side here we have volume up, volume down. We have the power button and fingerprint sensor. And then I believe this is a microphone. If you happen to know, let me know. I couldn't really find what that is. Up top here we have a noise canceling microphone, that's for sure. On the left side of the device, we just have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. And then on the bottom of the phone, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the main speaker. And then on the back of the phone, again, we have that eco leather finish, Motorola logo, dual camera setup. We have the portrait mode camera thing, sensor, whatever you want to call it. And then we have the flash. But overall, I'm super excited about the Motorola Moto G Power 2025. I think this phone is going to be very successful, and I think a lot of people are going to find this phone to be very useful, despite it actually being very affordable. I know there's a lot of people out there that just want to spend a couple $100 on a smartphone. They don't want to spend $1,000, but at the same time, they don't want something that's garbage. Now, thankfully, at least so far, this device does fit that criteria. So I definitely think it's worth considering. But most importantly, I'm curious to know what you think about the Motorola Moto G Power 2025. Let me know in the comment section below, but this is Kevin, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.